During the recent polar vortex, we actually got reminded how strong the climate denial movement is and how far it actually reaches into Congress. Now, Senator Jim Inhofe, famous climate denier, he was actually on right-wing radio, WABC-AM, with Aaron Klein, and said something interestingly dumb. Now, normally he says dumb things, but this was actually really interesting. Now, he had said, actually, that he was initially intrigued with Vice President Al Gore when he began talking about human-induced climate change. Oh, really? You were interested, Or intrigued? Really? Well, he actually became skeptical after discovering that environmental regulations would prove costly to businesses. Oh, okay, so since that might actually cost my donors money, well, can't have that. No, climate change, junk. Can't do it. And he actually says that he's not alone in thinking that way. He said, quote, "I find fewer and fewer members of the United States Senate that are sympathetic to the whole cause. Democrats use the threat of climate change in order just to pass burdensome regulation on business." Yes, as if that's what the Democrats are all about, since a lot of Democrats are paid by oil and gas. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense, now does it? But his thoughts actually do make a lot of sense when you follow the money. For example, according to the Center for Responsive Politics, James Inhofe received almost $300,000 in legal bribes from the oil and gas industry in the form of campaign contributions. Not so hard to understand where he's coming from when you follow the money. And that's exactly what you have to do. Now, in fact, there's actually $10,000 donated that was reported from Koch Industries. Koch Industries. Isn't that weird? He just so happens to not believe in climate change, and then magically gets money from the Koch brothers. Weird. Oh, isn't that weird how that turns out? But he continues on this radio show. Quote, "Those who have read my book know that this goes way back a long period of time, started by the United Nations. Here we go. That's when the whole global warming thing started. And frankly, I thought there might be something to it. Until we found out the cost it would be to the United States of America of $300 to $400 billion a year. Now, it didn't take much to do a little bit of research to find out that he's kind of full of shit. Let me explain. The cost of $300 to $400 billion is an estimate written in a paper by the IPCC, or on behalf of the IPCC, that actually tried to crunch the costs of trying to adapt to the climate change that's already here and into the future. Now, it wouldn't just be for America alone. And there's another thing he gets wrong. That would actually be for the entire world to adapt to climate change. Now, that's a lot of money. Don't get me wrong. That's a huge amount of money because we have a huge problem. And if we don't do something about it soon, well, the cost is just going to get higher. But this is his mindset. If it costs too much, well, we're just not going to do anything and pretend the problem doesn't exist. And that's basically it. Oh, well, it's too much of a problem to fix it. It's going to cost too much to fix it. So let's just pretend it doesn't exist. Put our fingers in our ears and hum. Oh, what, climate change? No, not happening. Costs too much. What are you talking about? It's also because these things would actually hurt their donors. Now, let me explain. Climate regulation, of course, makes it so that polluters can't pollute. That they actually have to clean up their operations and not, update their factories and start following safety regulations. Now, those are expensive for businesses. They are. And so it's understandable for a business wanting to cut down their costs. But this is not a cost that you should be able to cut. It should be a requirement to do things safely. But their donors do not like that and want to squeeze every last red cent out of whatever they can get. And that's really the whole plan. And so they buy off idiots like James Inhofe in order to do their bidding. the climate change numbers are expensive. So I had a thought. Maybe the people that are causing the climate change by polluting might have to pay a little bit of a share of that. Now, a report by Taxpayers for Common Sense actually crunched some of the numbers and found that in the last decade, oil companies have actually made over $1 trillion. $1 trillion. Now, in order to adapt to climate change, we would need worldwide 300 to 400 billion as an estimate. 1 trillion, 300 billion. I think they have enough money to help out a little bit. I don't know about you, but maybe they could put some of that extra money, instead of going back into corporate profits and executive bonuses, maybe they could take a little responsibility for themselves and for the planet and show other companies. And this is just the 5 largest oil companies. This isn't the entire energy sector. This is just the 5 biggest oil companies making over $1 trillion. Maybe they should use some of that money and show a good example of good stewardship towards the earth, of which they make their profit from. I don't think what we're asking is really all that radical. But I'm sure other people would beg to differ.